Are you confused about what really happened today in the Supreme Court in its landmark triple talaq case? Have you been following this case, were eagerly awaiting trying to see what the Supreme Court would do, and now are kind of in a position where you have no idea what happened? Well, you're not the only one. The Supreme Court has given us a 395-page judgment which includes 3 different opinions, 2 of which are sort of in agreement with each other and 1 which is entirely different. So, where do we begin with all of this? A woman named Shaira Bano brought this case to the Supreme Court saying that her husband, who had used this form of divorce to divorce her, had no right to do this whatsoever. And this was then tagged with a bunch of other petitions and a bunch of other cases which were all trying to decide whether or not triple talaq is a valid form of divorce. So today in court, 10:30 a.m, we all turn up at the court all nice and bright and early, and we're thinking, okay, judgment's going to come out. Everyone's sort of expecting a unanimous judgment from all 5 judges. And it starts off looking like that. The Chief Justice of India comes and gives a judgment. He says, you know what, actually, we can't really say anything about triple talaq because as the court, we can't really get into this question. Chief Justice comes, reads out this judgment, but he does say that the government should go and legislate, and he puts a 6-month sort of temporary ban on triple talaq being used by anyone. So, everyone's thinking this is it. You have reporters going out of the courtroom, lawyers leaving, and then Justice Kurian Joseph first comes up and says, actually, you know what, I don't agree with the Chief Justice. And I think actually that triple talaq in this sort of instant form, which is known as talaq-e-biddat, he says triple talaq of this form actually is not applicable in Muslim personal law. So, okay, everyone's a little surprised. They're like, okay, fine. So we've got one dissenting judgment. And then Justice Nariman comes up and says that both he and Justice Lalit, so this means 2 out of 5 judges plus another one in Kurian Joseph, have come up and said actually they don't agree with the Chief Justice and actually they think triple talaq needs to be set aside and struck down, which is what the judgment finally holds in a majority of 3:2. Now, it's an interesting thing because normally as Chief Justice of India, when he gives his opinion, he tends to be in the majority, but here we actually had a Chief Justice of India in his very last week at work was actually dissented and disagreed with by a bunch of judges on his bench and overruled as a result. So, what does this judgment now do for people? What this means is that from today at the very least, there is no situation where a Muslim man can divorce his wife by just using this instant triple talaq routine. So, a guy who either writes it out on a piece of paper or he says it to a wife and he says, you know what, talaq, 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 this marriage is over, that can't be done anymore. The government came in sort of as this sort of white knight kind of person saying, law, you know what, we're here to protect Muslim women and give them a better deal, and we will make a law if necessary to ensure that Muslim women can't be discriminated against and divorced using this thing. But what about the people who brought this case to the court? What about Shaira Bano, who's the main petitioner here, the one who was divorced in 2015 using triple talaq? Now, it's a slightly tricky thing because what happens in a decision of the court is if they hold that something is illegal or unconstitutional. Now, that is normally what we call prospective. That means that from the day the judgment is given, that's what the position of law is. And that's what, in a sense, the judges seem to have done in this case, because they don't ever say actually that this judgment is going to apply to things before, that is retrospective. That kind of doesn't really work very well for the petitioners, including Shaira Bano, because that means that actually when they asked for the divorce, this wasn't unconstitutional, this wasn't illegal, and so, you know what, while future women will get the protection, these people who, because of whom this judgment came to the court, wouldn't get it. But in a Supreme Court decision from 2002, actually triple talaq really has no basis in Muslim law. So regardless of the constitutionality issue or any of that, if it's recognizing that a case from 2002 which said that triple talaq doesn't really stand in Muslim law from 2002 is applicable, that should benefit Shaira Bano and the other petitioners who've come forward in this case. Now, we know that the government has been a strong advocate for the Uniform Civil Code, and they've been saying for a long time that they want to sort of bring Muslim personal law into a codified set of statutes, which is where, of course, Justice Nariman's judgment really comes into play, because he says, you know what, look, Muslims at least, their personal law has sort of been brought up into to the level where other laws are also examined under the Constitution because of this old legislation in 1937. Now, that's a huge step, because what that means is that every aspect of Muslim personal law can now be examined in light of the Constitution. So this will affect subsequent cases which are coming up on concepts of nikah halala, on even polyamory, the fact that Muslim men can marry 4 different women. This all is going to start now being evaluated in the context of the Constitution. This judgment really gives us an opportunity to move forward from there. And it's a judgment which is a victory for Muslim women, it's a victory for progressives, and will hopefully not be used as a political tool, as a political bargaining chip, which at some level we can expect will happen, but we can obviously just hope it isn't, and that it's actually taken as just a victory for women and a victory for, you know, doing the right thing in this country.